All right, team, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm not sure who had a snow day today, but I know all the schools around us had snow days, so it's been a little blizzardy around here, as I'm sure it might be by you too. So tonight, our main theme is giving students greater responsibility with valuable work. Hopefully you guys all had the opportunity to do all the pre-sessions and get some more knowledge around that as we kind of dive in tonight through that lens of the pre-session work. So tonight we have a breakout room discussions, which tonight you guys will be randomly assigned to those. And then we'll do some teaching and learning around instruction and different ways to modify tasks. And then we'll give you guys some work time and then wrap up. We do have a couple exit tickets we wanted to throw out there for you guys tonight. So we'll kind of talk about that at the end. But if for any reason you need to leave early, on the navigation guide, you'll see the March exit ticket and a survey link. If you guys can make sure you fill those out, that would be awesome. One more housekeeping thing, Carol and I are, as well as many other math specialists from ISU as well, are hosting a Standards Academy. And Carol was going to post the link in the chat for you guys tonight. The Standards Academy is a week-long session where you guys can come either to Pocatello or to Idaho Falls, depending on your grade level band. We're hosting 4th through 8th grade. And it's a week where we're just diving into your grade level standard and getting to know that somewhere in the ratio and proportions section. So if you guys have any more questions about that, I know it's just like a brief caveat, but the deadline to sign up for that is on March 15th. So we would love to get you guys signed up as possible, and you guys get discounts if you come with a team member as well. So thanks, Carol, for doing that. All right, so we're going to jump right into our success starter. As you guys are watching this video, I just want you to be prepared to have some takeaways or thoughts about this video as you jump into your breakout sessions.
I'll be fine. I'll do it. Well, here goes something, I guess. Oh, can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Keep it straight, you'll be fine.
Okay.
Keep going this morning.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep. Have
It's a
fun.
bigger 20. Go ahead. You got it. I got it. Fine. You'll be fine. Okay. Here. The longer you wait, you'll be more scared. Go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now.
All right, so I love this video, because it kind of helps build us up, right? When something really challenging is in front of us. And that's really the whole goal of tonight is how can we build a classroom that has productive struggle and giving students the responsibility of the learning. So hopefully you guys took away a couple things like, what did you notice? Maybe how will the skier's perspective change as she tackles new challenges? And then I also want you to think about a moment that you have had where you really struggled. And all of those experiences and stories are so empowering for students. And it's definitely sharing with students how we struggle as well. So the whole goal is building positive math communities in our classroom and really fostering that productive struggle. So on the next part, you guys are going to, in your breakout sessions, you guys will assign a timekeeper. The first 5 minutes, I would like you to just discuss the video. Like, could you use this success starter in your classroom? How could it help support productive struggle with students, and maybe what are some big takeaways? And then the last 15 minutes, you guys have a reading to split up with your group. That reading is on your navigation guide, and I can throw that in the chat for you really quick. But it is on cooperative learning. So you guys should have read or learned about a bunch of cooperative learning structures in your pre-session. So we'll throw the article for you in the chat. And then first thing to do in your breakout rooms is to just assign a timekeeper, 5 minutes to go over the video, and then 15 minutes to kind of split up the reading and then discuss the reading. So we will meet back here at about 5:30, and I will put you guys into breakout rooms now, if that works for you. I was only able to get into 2 rooms, but hopefully you guys had some awesome conversations. I would just love to hear just from a couple people, honestly, like maybe a big idea that you and your team talked about, or a challenge that kind of came up for you, or it could even be a question that maybe circled from your team. Just kind of think about this as an open forum of something you'd like to share or ask to the group. So feel free to just chime in.
I just really liked that they called them study teams. I've heard different things about groups, but just calling it a study team has a different feel to it for me.
Cool. Thanks, Rebecca.
My group of 3 and I talked about different strategies that we could use within our different classes. Like, I have a much different group of kids than they have, so we just talked about how it would be beneficial for different groups to do different types of strategies. And a big theme was ownership, like taking ownership of your own learning.
Yeah, that's awesome, Hannah. What specific strategy did you feel like would work best for you?
The hot potato one.
Okay, cool.
You said you knew this. I do not see your colored pencil on the paper.
Anyone else want to share a big idea or question or challenge? We'll take one more.
One of the things that we were talking about setting up are just those classroom norms, and using the I like when, I don't like when, as we're already doing vertical collaboration in my class, but we haven't actually written out a set of classroom norms for during that time. So I think that would be really helpful to really dive into just clear expectations for that time. I'm also going to echo, I liked a lot of these strategies, the hot potato for doing just like reviews for math, especially like a post-assessment where there's like a problem that some kids got, some kids didn't. It would be a great opportunity to air that out again. And then I loved the real time update the board with live quotes from the classroom. So it's just this quiz that's going on, so kids are hearing what's being said.
Yeah, I like that too. And Jen, just to piggyback off of what you were saying of like setting up classroom norms, I know some teachers are probably thinking like, oh, well, it's already March, I'll do it next year kind of thing. But what a great opportunity to just try it for yourself even this year, and then go through and have practice and conversations. And again, this is really a skill that we're developing for ourselves to have our students have more autonomy in our classroom. So this is an ongoing journey for teachers and for us to be able to practice in our classroom. So don't feel like, oh, if there's not that much of the year left, it's a great time of the year to try way too many new things. So, and fail at them a couple times and have a couple wins and remember those wins for next year. So awesome. Let's dive in. The next section I have for you guys is kind of split up into two sections. But before we jump right into that, I just want to refresh ourselves with the teaching practices. And again, these are all high leverage practices that we are trying to do to help elevate our classroom and to be the best math teacher that we can possibly be. So tonight we're kind of always going back to that mathematical goals to focus our learning. And again, that's just thinking about learning progressions. That's thinking about our standards walls that many of you guys have been sending Carol and I, which has been awesome to see. We talked a lot about posing purposeful questions and facilitating mathematical discourse a lot in the pre-session. Last month, we focused a lot on implementing tasks that promote reasoning and problem solving. And tonight, we're really kind of going down to those two bottom ones of really supporting productive struggle in learning math, as well as eliciting and using evidence of student thinking. So again, these are just to have in the back of your head so that we can kind of keep circling back to them. So where are we going? You guys did a lot of work on the cooperative learning strategies, also the teaching practices. Tonight, we're dipping more into productive struggle and then just thinking about instructional teaching models. So there is no right or wrong with instructional teaching models. But tonight we are just kind of taking a look at them and what they look like in our classroom. So this first part of one of the two tasks is going to be reflecting on our classroom and how it complements our math teaching practices. So the first one, or the first type of instructional model is direct instruction. This is how I believe probably every single one of us was taught in school. And the definition of direct instruction, I think, is quite fascinating. It is from San Giovanni's book, The Productive Struggle, and it says, is based on the notion that all details of instruction must be controlled to eliminate misunderstanding, misconception, or misinterpretation, which in turn greatly improves and accelerates learning. So I would just like you really quickly in the chat, what comes to mind or what feelings come to mind when you hear that quote? Positive, neutral, negative, just really quick in the chat. I would love to hear what you guys have to say, just when you hear that quote, and how does it complement our math teaching practices?
Reading that, it seems like there are a lot of absolutes. And so if this were a multiple choice, and I was like, ooh, they used all and must be. This is probably not right.
Yeah, who is the learner? That's a good question. Who's doing the thinking?
For me, Angela, it's like, what does it mean to learn? If you just mean to learn means to be able to spit out the processes, then maybe they're not wrong. But we've all defined learning totally differently.
Totally. And again, this is not an either or a debate. And as educators, we shouldn't like feel caught in the middle. We are educators, right? So our job is to find the appropriate strategy at the appropriate time. So I think sometimes direct instruction can come across as teachers are doing all the thinking and students are kind of doing the mimicking, which I see you guys are writing a lot in the classroom. But tonight, I just want to bring awareness around what our teaching goals are, and those goals shift every single day in the classroom. So I just am throwing this out there, but can you think of a time where direct instruction is needed? I can think of like probably like vocabulary is like direct instructions a must, like teaching symbols or any like formalized understanding or precise language that could support our math, I think is all important. So
Sometimes on consolidation too, you can do some of that direct instruction, you know, when you're wrapping it all up. It's something that they already have an idea of how it works, but you're just kind of tying it all together. So it's not a bad time to do, you know, it's not new teaching necessarily, but you're wrapping it up and talking about it and teaching.
yeah, awesome. Thanks, Carol.
Mhm.
You guys have seen this before, but I just am fascinated by this chart all the time. This is hard. Direct instruction, the time constraints, and just thinking about students' ability to, even adults, I look at that and I'm like, oh yes, 15 to 18 minutes. I'm even me, right? Like 15 minutes, you're like, okay, I'm ready to move on to something else. So how do we follow this, and how often can we change our teaching routines to think about like what grade level band are we in and how many minutes is appropriate for direct instruction? So these are where we can kind of toss in some of those cooperative learning structures to break up the direct instruction. A lot of the building thinking classroom structures also really support this. Any kind of movement or student group table work, that kind of thing, to kind of, again, put that on the students so that we are not the focus of the instruction or the learning here. Rebecca, I just saw yours pop up, so I wanted to read it. I know a fourth grade teacher who talks about how her math lesson takes 30 to 45 minutes before students go off to practice. Yeah, so that's really tough. It's like if the teacher is up doing the talking for 30 or 40 minutes, and let's say, well, she's a fourth grade teacher, so she realistically probably only had the first 8 to 12 minutes of students before they're no longer really kind of taking ownership of their learning anymore, right? They're probably doing something else, or I can think of many times where students would be doodling or you're taking away toys or something else. So just again, something to throw in the back pocket of like, how many minutes do I actually have before students should be kind of moving on to their next task? Another teaching model that we use a lot, or instructional model, is kind of this gradual release process of I do, we do, you do. And again, this is very teacher focused. The teacher kind of talks about something, and then we're having students kind of practice that steps. And I just wrote like a list of questions that made me think about like who's doing the struggling, who's doing the actual thinking, and who's really doing the owning of the learning. And then does this model complement our teaching practices? So is it really like what we're aiming for when we think of the gold standard of teaching math? I always like to kind of flip this around. And I know in like the building thinking classroom structure, a lot of the times it's kind of upside down. It's you do all the work, the student does it, and then like groups of students do it, or groups of students go and do it. And then the teacher kind of comes and has strategies and helps makes connections, and the method of thinking kind of helps moves the class forward, but with the students being the person that is the you do first. So a lot of the time, this can feel super risky, like you're not doing the teaching. But remember, we're working towards giving students more responsibility and more ownership of their work. So we want to be doing things differently, so that they're kind of owning the learning, as well as kind of challenging them. We want them to feel like, oh, I can sit in this struggle. One of the groups I was listening to earlier, they were just saying like, it took a couple days for their class to feel really empowered when things started to connect. And that's great. We want them to sit in the messiness so that when things start to connect, they have some real ownership of that learning. And then the last part of this is kind of the inquiry-based instruction, where it's a learning experience where students are taking the academic control of the rich task. There's lots of visible student evidence. And again, I just wonder, like, how does this complement our teaching practices? And again, we see a lot of this through the building thinking classrooms as well. We have students kind of just jump in and work on a problem that maybe they have not been instructed on or seen anything like it in that kind of task. So take a minute and read over these 4 questions. And if you guys want to type them in the chat, awesome. But tonight's really a reflective reflection of your own practice and what's going on in your classroom. So don't feel like you have to type it in the chat, but I'm going to give you guys about 3 or so minutes, or let's just take 2 minutes to just quickly ask yourself these questions. So that last one too is like, what kind of questions did you ask today? I love this because it gives us an exact percentage. If we ask one student a question, 1 kid is engaged. If we ask kids to pair share with their shoulder partner or face partner, however, how your room is set up, we're getting 100% student engagement. So that's kind of just something to think about in the back of your head. Obviously, if we're having one student present their work because of a model or something, it might be a different structure or reason behind that. But when you're asking questions, think about how many kids you can get engaged at one time. So, all right. So again, we're really focusing on this productive struggle and really getting students to kind of grapple with different relationships and make connections on their own in math. So the second task tonight that you guys have the option to work on is modifying tasks to promote productive struggle. So when you think about productive struggle, we also have to think about the kind of questions that we're asking and how we are presenting this. Is it kind of a one way to do it? And if it is, then it's probably not going to promote productive struggle. And then how does this complement our math teaching practices? So here's just a couple qualities in general of promoting productive struggle. It's problem-based, it's interesting, they're quality. They don't have, again, like one root procedure. Kids can make connections between different concepts, so maybe different models, different strategies to solve. And the next few slides are going to be different ways to change questions. So at the end of the night, you guys can refer back to these slides as for examples as well, just to give you a heads up. So the first part is kind of changing that conceptual understanding. So students are given this proof that it works, and then they're challenged to make sense of the thinking. So I love doing this too, because we're telling students the answer, or we're telling them, hey, this works, but now you need to change it and challenge it to make sense of kind of the problem that we gave. So again, these are just all different examples for different grade level bands as we go through these tonight. So conceptual understanding is kind of that first part. The next part is procedural. So again, procedural, we're kind of giving students different ways and different strategies to solve things, but we want them to be able to build the relationships between the different ideas. So I love the 3rd through 5th grade example, because I think so often like algorithms and standard algorithms, even in middle school and high school, are really routinely taught, but we're never really asking students like, how are these the same problem and how are they different? And really make connections between maybe all those different multiplication strategies, for instance. So procedural fluency is another type of modification. And then another like thought is also application tasks. So how can we help students apply understanding to solve a problem? So what coins might he have in his pocket? And the 3rd through 5th is again, like what might the area of those rectangles be? So again, these are like not exact answers. These are like, what could the answer be given this 36 cents in his pocket? So there's multiple answers, there's multiple ways to solve, and it gives students a variety of solutions to find. So the next few slides are ways to modify tasks. These are very specific ways to modify tasks. each one of the next few slides has the original task and then the way to kind of like create it. So asking students to create multiple representations. All these slides are a really great visual of like kind of finding the difference, so to speak. So if we look at the original primary task in this one, it asks us to find the missing number. So really, what plus 5 equals 10? Like all of those would be very, you might find them on the wall. Students could use counters or, there's no other way to solve. And then if we go to the way to modify a task where we know we want them to find numbers to make 10, we can say that there are 10 clownfish. Some are orange and some are yellow. How many of each fish might there be? So again, when we use that word might, it helps open the door to finding like many possible solutions to this. Same thing kind of with the intermediate and the middle school tasks. It opens the door to kind of create multiple representations to a task. So that first way to modify or that we're talking about right now is kind of like what they call the create strategy. The next one is a connect. So again, making connections between different representations. As you guys are kind of looking through these tasks, just go ahead and type in the chat what you notice or what you find interesting about this one is connecting different representations and why you find these modified tasks as more, I would say, like a higher level of thinking. Yeah, Leslie, interesting. You notice the pictures go away. Yeah, I think it's kind of very interesting that the pictures go away, right? Because if we give kids, like I love the fraction one, like write the fraction that each figure represents. It's like we want students to be able to make that. Maybe they think about it as a 10 frame. Maybe they think about it as a chocolate bar or something else, right? So it allows them to make their own representations rather than us making them use a representation that we want them to use, if that makes sense. So yeah, multiple ways to kind of create. So cool. Thank you for sharing those. The next one is reverse the problem. So again, this is kind of giving students like the opposite. So like rather than saying what fraction does this point represent, it says this point is 3/4 on each number line. So then you have to fill in all of the missing parts. I also love the middle school one. Normally we ask kids to find a solution rather than write a system of equations with the solution. So we're again giving them almost the answer that you would typically find. And then we're asking them to kind of fill in the actual problem. So it is very actively creating these. And these are very easy to tweak, right? If you think about your curriculum and maybe what's coming up or even lessons that you've already previously done, how easy it is to kind of just tweak a couple of these problems. And it makes students really have to kind of rethink what they're doing. This next example is kind of opening it up and asking students open-ended questions. So again, it gives them a variety of possible solutions. It also gives them different ways to come about it. Again, this also makes me think of open middle. Carol, why am I blanking on the book, right? Open middle, the book that has,
Yeah, I think it's just open middle.
I think it's just open middle. I was thinking there was another
Yeah.
word. But all of those kind of problems are, again, like very open. They're explicitly like not looking for one targeted answer, but what numbers would work.
And I think what I really like about this, I was watching as I'm watching all the comments, it really not only hits what kids know, but requires kids to bring their own background information and make their own connections to what they already know. So it's just that it takes that step, that it requires it. So it's there. It's awesome.
And Hannah, yes, it makes kids experiment because they are being really forced to try different number combinations. So,
Can I
um,
throw out something on open middles?
Oh,
I
yeah.
used it with
Go
high
ahead.
schoolers. For starters, try them yourself. They're
Yeah.
harder than they seem.
Yeah.
Oh, they're very hard. Yes.
But like in some ways they were easier than I thought, in others they were harder. But what I learned from it wasn't what I thought I would learn from it. Like, if that makes sense. What
Mhm.
they have to know to make an open middle work, just, it's different from what they need to know to use the algorithm or to solve the problem or even to make a connection. And
Mhm.
that's what kind of shocked me, was the different kind of understanding I could get at, and which of my students had that and which didn't, and
Yeah.
what their strategies were when they approached solving it, based on whether they could even understand the idea of equivalence on both sides and what the constants were doing versus what the variables were doing. But even I was like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. And I felt like I have a good conceptual understanding, but it was another way to use it. And so I'd never used it in that. It's hard to explain without doing one, but in that format. So they were powerful, but man, they harder than I thought they'd be for me, because it's very not difficult. Math is different than what
Different.
I've done before. Yeah.
Which also gives you a real clear idea. Like if you think of formative assessment, it gives you not just do they know this answer, but what do they understand? Do they understand equivalence? And it just gives you such a broader idea of what they know,
Mhm. Very true. So this is kind of just bringing it back as a review of, as we looked at those different ways to modify tasks, how does this support productive struggle? And how does this complement our math teaching practices? So all those different ways of modifying tasks help with multiple entry level points to access the task. So a variety of learners, right? There was multiple strategies and multiple solutions. And quite a few of them helped make different connections between concepts. So again, the ways to modify tasks help us with that problem-based. They're a little more interesting, they're a little more engaging than kind of just fill in the blank, so to speak. So I am going to leave you guys with this last quote. Critical thinking is at the heart of problem solving, which is in turn at the heart of mathematics. Critical thinking is needed today more than ever as tools and technologies significantly support procedures and calculations. Critical thinking is developed through experience, engagement, discussion, and struggle, not direct instruction. So again, we are empowering our students to be the critical thinkers and the problem solvers and the engineers and the inventors and the whatever, you name it, in the next 50 years. So what kind of tools and support are we giving them to make those decisions? So tonight, I realized I went over quite a bit in time, but tonight is really about examining your own instructional practices. So that could be what the task that you guys take first is having some honest reflection about what current practices you may or may not be doing in your class to help support that productive struggle. So what could you maybe shift, or what could you try this week to help build a little bit more of that productive struggle in your classroom? Or you could kind of go the other way and you could look at your upcoming week's unit or your upcoming week's lessons or your unit, and how could you modify tasks to support productive struggle? So again, our main goal is thinking about those mathematical teaching practices and what are we doing in our classroom to make sure that we are working towards those. Not all of them, maybe just one of them, and what steps can we take to kind of get there? So these would be your two tasks that you guys have. If you're going to do the modify tasks, unless you own the productive struggle book, I was gonna hold it up, but it is not on my desk, so I can find it soon. But then you'll just have to kind of look back on the slides for those different ways to modify. That's kind of what I wrote in the note or on the navigation guide. And then the other one is honest, just a reflection. So I know Carol was going to open the breakout rooms, and you guys are welcome to join a breakout room. I know many of you guys have expressed like you love the collaboration time and just talking with other teachers. And others of you guys prefer to work on your own. So we did just do grade band breakout rooms, and then rooms 1 through 5, it looks like. And then any room after 5 is just open if you and a teammate or you want to go by yourself can work. And then Carol and I will also just kind of be in this room to answer questions, or I know a couple of you had asked for some help on a couple of issues that have come up in your school. So we do have like a couple really important things I want to touch on for the closing business. So I'll close the breakout rooms right at 6:25 so that we can wrap up and get you guys all out of here on time. So feel free to join a breakout room if you wish. And if not, you can just turn your screen off if you don't want to talk to Carol and I, and we'll be around to rooms as well.